The desperate gambit. The mining station Haven's Rest drifted silently through the void of space, its hull scarred by countless asteroid impacts and solar radiation. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood in the cramped command center, watching the readouts on her flickering screens. The station looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a failing human outpost desperately trying to extract enough minerals from the nearby asteroid field to stay operational. Maya's weathered face showed the strain of someone who had been fighting a losing battle for too long. Her uniform was patched and faded, matching the general state of everything else on the station. Around her, the small crew of 12 worked at their stations with the quiet desperation of people who knew they were hanging on by a thread. "Captain," called out Dr. James Kim from his science station, his voice carrying the same weary tone that had become normal on Haven's Rest. "The mineral extractors are acting up again. We're only getting about 60% efficiency from the main processors." Maya nodded slowly, making a note on her tablet. "Do what you can with spare parts, James. We can't afford to shut down operations for major repairs." She looked around the command center, taking in the jury-rigged equipment and makeshift solutions that kept their operation running. Everything about Haven's Rest screamed of humanity's struggle to survive in a hostile galaxy. The station had been operating in this remote system for almost 3 years, officially listed as a private mining venture barely managing to break even. The crew manifest showed 12 people, engineers, miners, and scientists, all trying to make a living in the dangerous business of asteroid mining. Their equipment was old, their resources limited, and their prospects dim. Lieutenant Sarah Connor, the station's security chief, was checking the perimeter sensors when her equipment started detecting something that made her blood run cold. "Captain, I'm picking up massive energy signatures approaching our position. Multiple contacts, coming in fast." Maya moved to Sarah's station, studying the sensor readings with growing concern. The signatures were huge, much larger than anything human-made. "How many ships, Sarah?" "I count at least 20 vessels, Mom. They're big ones too, each one easily 10 times the size of our entire station." Sarah looked up from her instruments with genuine worry in her eyes. "Captain, those energy signatures, they match the Vorthan Empire fleet configuration." A chill ran through the command center. Everyone knew about the Vorthans, a militant alien race that had been expanding aggressively through this sector of the galaxy. They were known for their overwhelming military might and their habit of enslaving or destroying any species they considered inferior. Dr. Kim looked up from his station with barely concealed fear. "Captain, the Vorthans don't negotiate. They take what they want and crush anything that stands in their way. We've all heard the stories from the colonies they've hit." Engineer Pete Williams, a gruff man in his 50s who had been maintaining the station's aging systems, wiped his hands on his coveralls. "Our defensive systems are practically non-existent, Captain. We got maybe 2 old plasma cannons and some mining charges. Against a Vorthan fleet, we might as well throw rocks at them." Maya walked to the center of the command center and stared out at the stars through the main viewport. In the distance, she could see the first signs of the approaching fleet, pinpricks of light growing steadily brighter. She took a deep breath and turned to face her crew. "Everyone listen carefully," she said in a steady voice. "We all knew this day might come. Haven's Rest has always been vulnerable out here, and we've always known that eventually someone might try to take what we've built." She paused, looking at each member of her crew. "But we're not going to give up without a fight." The Vorthan fleet emerged from hyperspace in a spectacular display of military might. 20 massive warships arranged themselves in attack formation around the tiny human mining station. Each vessel was a testament to Vorthan engineering, sleek, powerful, and bristling with weapons. The lead ship, easily twice the size of the others, bore the twisted spiral symbol of the Vorthan High Command. On the bridge of the flagship, Commander Zexthal studied the human outpost with 4 cold, reptilian eyes. The Vorthans were an ancient race, evolved from predatory creatures on a harsh world where only the strongest survived. Their society was built on the principle of might making right, and they had little patience for weaker species. A human mining station, Zexthal said to his tactical officer, his voice carrying the disdain typical of his species when discussing humanity. Look at it, barely holding together, operating with primitive technology. These humans scatter themselves across the galaxy like parasites, scraping out a pitiful existence wherever they can find resources. The tactical officer, a younger Vorthan named Kretul, nodded in agreement. Our intelligence reports indicate that humans are a relatively new spacefaring species, Commander. They have no unified government, no real military might. They survive through scavenging and mining operations like this one. Zexthal examined the scanned results of Haven's Rest with growing amusement. The station showed minimal defensive capabilities, outdated technology, and what appeared to be a desperate crew trying to maintain failing equipment. Open a communication channel to the human station. Let's see how these creatures react when faced with real power. Back on Haven's Rest, the communication system crackled to life with an incoming transmission. Maya nodded to Dr. Kim, who activated the main screen. The image of Commander Zexthal filled the display. An imposing figure with scaled skin, razor-sharp teeth, and the cold, calculating eyes of a born predator. Human station. Zexthal began in a voice that carried absolute authority. I am Commander Zexthal of the 4th and 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. Your pathetic outpost now belongs to the Vorthan Empire. You will immediately surrender all resources and personnel. Any attempt at resistance will result in the complete destruction of your station. Maya stepped forward, making sure to appear appropriately intimidated. Commander Zexthal, we are just a small mining operation trying to make a living. We have no military value and pose no threat to your empire. Surely we can reach some kind of arrangement. Zexthal's laugh was like the sound of grinding metal. Arrangement? You misunderstand your position, human. Your species exists only because we have not yet decided to eliminate you entirely. Your technology is primitive, your military non-existent. You will serve the Vorthan Empire as laborers, nothing more. But Commander, Maya continued, maintaining her act of desperation, we have families here, people who have worked hard to build this station. We can offer you a percentage of our mineral output, technical services, anything you need. The only service you can provide, Zexthal replied coldly, is absolute obedience. You have exactly 5 minutes to power down all systems and prepare for boarding. If you comply, your deaths will be quick. If you resist, we will take what we want from your wreckage. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Maya looked around at her crew, all of whom were watching her carefully. The fear on their faces appeared genuine, but there was something else there too. A readiness that didn't quite match their civilian cover story. Well, Maya said quietly, I think 5 minutes is more than enough time. She walked to her command chair and sat down, her entire demeanor beginning to change. Pete, are all the mining crews back aboard? Yes, ma'am, Pete replied, his voice losing its earlier worried tone. All personnel are secured and ready. James, what's the status on our special projects? Dr. Kim checked his instruments with movements that were suddenly much more precise and military in nature. All systems are green, Captain. We've been ready for weeks. Maya nodded and pressed a button on her command console. Throughout the station, alert klaxons began to sound. Not the panicked wail of an emergency, but the steady, purposeful tone of a military vessel going to battle stations. All stations, this is Captain Rodriguez, she announced over the intercom. Operation Last Stand is now active. Repeat, Operation Last Stand is now active. All personnel to battle stations. The transformation of Haven's Rest began immediately. What had appeared to be jury-rigged mining equipment suddenly revealed its true purpose as camouflaged weapon systems. The maintenance panels slid away to expose advanced targeting computers. The mineral processing equipment reconfigured itself into sophisticated sensor arrays and electronic warfare systems. Sarah Connor was no longer hunched over aging security monitors. She stood straight at what was now clearly an advanced tactical station, her fingers dancing over controls that would have been impossible to find on a real mining station. "Captain, all defensive systems are coming online. Stealth protocols are disengaging." "Pete," Maya called out, "what's our power status?" Engineer Williams, who no longer looked like a tired maintenance worker, grinned as he checked his readings. "Fusion reactors are at full power, Captain. All systems showing green across the board." Outside the station, the Vorthans watched in growing confusion as their sensors began detecting readings that made no sense. The small mining station was suddenly generating massive amounts of energy. Weapon signatures were appearing all across its surface, weapon signatures that their computers couldn't identify or classify. "Commander," reported the tactical officer, his voice filled with uncertainty, "something is wrong with our sensor readings. The human station is showing power levels that exceed our own flagship." Zexthal stared at his displays in disbelief. "That's impossible. Run a full diagnostic on all sensor systems." "Sir, I've run 3 diagnostics. All systems are functioning normally." "Commander, that station is not what we thought it was." Maya Rodriguez stood up from her command chair, and as she did, her faded mining outfit dissolved away, replaced by the crisp uniform of the Earth Defense Force. 4 stars gleamed on her collar, marking her rank as a full admiral. Around her, her crew underwent similar transformations, revealing themselves as some of humanity's most elite military personnel. "Dr. Kim," Admiral Rodriguez said in a voice now filled with quiet authority, "drop the mining station masquerade and show them what Haven's Rest really is." "Yes, ma'am," Dr. Kim replied, his own transformation revealing the insignia of a highly decorated military scientist. Activating true configuration now. The outer shell of Haven's Rest began to unfold like a blooming flower. What had appeared to be a ramshackle mining station revealed itself as one of humanity's most advanced military research facilities. Weapon ports opened along the hull, revealing armaments that existed nowhere else in human space. The station's true size became apparent as hidden sections extended outward, tripling its apparent mass. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As the stealth fields around the station completely dropped, space itself seemed to come alive. What the Vorthans had thought was empty void was suddenly filled with ships. Dozens of human vessels that had been hiding in perfect silence, waiting for this moment. Admiral Rodriguez opened a communication channel to the Vorthan fleet. When her image appeared on Zexthal's screen, she bore no resemblance to the frightened mining station captain he had spoken to minutes before. "Commander Zexthal," she said with a smile that was anything but friendly, "allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Admiral Maya Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force, commanding officer of Research Station Haven's Rest and the 7th Experimental Fleet." Zexthal stared at the screen in shock, his confidence evaporating as he began to understand the magnitude of his mistake. "You see, Commander," Admiral Rodriguez continued, "we've been expecting you. Humanity's true face." Commander Zexthal's bridge erupted in chaos as his officers tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The small human mining station had transformed into a massive military installation, and their sensors were now detecting over 40 human vessels surrounding the Vorthan fleet. Ships that had been completely invisible moments before were now powering up weapons and targeting systems. "How is this possible?" Zexthal demanded of his science officer. "Our intelligence clearly stated that humans have no advanced military capabilities." The science officer's scaled hands trembled as he worked his controls. "Commander, our intelligence was wrong. These weapon signatures, some of them don't match anything in our database, and the energy readings from that station suggest technology that's decades ahead of what we thought humans possessed." Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system with calm authority. "Commander Zexthal, let me explain what you've stumbled into. Haven's Rest isn't just a research station, it's humanity's most classified military development facility. For the past 5 years, we've been working on technologies specifically designed to counter threats like the Vorthan Empire. On Haven's Rest, the transformation was complete. Dr. James Kim was no longer a simple mining station scientist. His real identity was that of Earth's leading expert in xenobiology and psychological warfare. His gentle demeanor had been replaced by the focused intensity of someone who had spent years studying how to defeat humanity's enemies. "Admiral," Dr. Kim reported from his now sophisticated science station, "I'm reading elevated stress hormones across the entire Vorthan fleet. Their heart rates are increasing rapidly, and I'm detecting signs of panic in their communications." Lieutenant Sarah Connor, now revealed as one of Earth's most decorated tactical officers, studied her displays with professional calm. "Ma'am, the Vorthan fleet is trying to reform into defensive positions, but they're having trouble coordinating. It appears our electronic warfare systems are interfering with their communications." Engineer Pete Williams, whose true identity was that of humanity's foremost expert in advanced propulsion and weapon systems, looked up from his engineering station with satisfaction. "Admiral, all experimental weapon systems are online and ready. The Vorthans are about to get their first look at what human desperation and ingenuity can create." Admiral Rodriguez nodded, then turned back to the communication screen where Zexthal was visible, his earlier confidence completely gone. "You see, Commander, humanity learned something very important early in our expansion into space. We learned that the galaxy is full of species like yours, species that view any sign of weakness as an invitation to attack." The truth was even more complex than the Vorthans could imagine. Haven's Rest was one of 12 identical facilities, each disguised as different types of civilian operations throughout human space. They had been established after humanity's first encounters with hostile alien species, when it became clear that showing their true technological capabilities too early would make them targets for every aggressive empire in the galaxy. The strategy had been brilliant in its simplicity. Let the aliens believe that humans were primitive, scattered, and vulnerable. Meanwhile, humanity's best minds worked in secret to develop weapons and technologies that could level the playing field when the inevitable confrontations came. Dr. Kim pressed several controls on his science station. "Admiral, I'm now broadcasting on all Vorthan frequencies. Every ship in their fleet is receiving a complete analysis of their military capabilities, tactical doctrines, and psychological profiles. They're beginning to understand that we've been studying them for years." The information flooding the Vorthan systems was devastating in its accuracy. Detailed schematics of their ships, complete analyses of their weapon systems, and even personal psychological profiles of their commanders. It was clear that humanity had been watching and learning for far longer than anyone had imagined. "Impossible," whispered Kretul, the tactical officer, as he stared at his displays. "They know everything about us. Fleet compositions, weapon specifications, even our classified research projects. How long have they been watching us?" Zexthal's mind raced as he tried to process the implications. If the humans had this much intelligence on the Vorthan Empire, what did that say about their own intelligence capabilities? How many other primitive human outposts were actually advanced military installations? Admiral Rodriguez continued her explanation, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "The Vorthan Empire has conquered 17 different species over the past century. You've done it through overwhelming force and the element of surprise, but you've never encountered an enemy that was ready for you." Pete Williams activated the first of Haven's Rest's experimental weapons, a gravitational manipulation device that had been disguised as a mineral processing unit. Space around the Vorthan flagship began to distort as artificial gravity fields formed and collapsed in carefully controlled patterns. "What's happening to our engines?" shouted the Vorthan chief engineer as his ship began to experience irregular acceleration patterns. The gravitational effects weren't damaging the ship, but they were demonstrating a level of technological control that the Vorthans had never seen before. "That's just a taste of what we've developed," Admiral Rodriguez explained. "You see, when humanity realized we were sharing the galaxy with species like yours, we had two choices. We could build bigger fleets and fight you on your terms, or we could develop technologies that would make your advantages irrelevant." Sarah Connor activated the next demonstration, a series of quantum communication disruptors that selectively jammed specific frequencies while leaving others untouched. Suddenly, half the Vorthan fleet found themselves unable to communicate with the other half, while their enemies' communications remained crystal clear. "Sir," reported the communications officer on Zexthal's ship, "we're experiencing selective jamming across multiple frequency bands. But somehow the humans are still able to coordinate perfectly between all their vessels." Dr. Kim smiled as he monitored the psychological effects of the demonstration. "Admiral, Vorthan stress levels are now approaching critical thresholds. Several of their ship commanders are requesting permission to retreat." But Admiral Rodriguez wasn't finished. The next phase of the demonstration would show the Vorthans exactly what humanity was capable of when pushed to its limits. "Pete, activate the matter manipulation arrays." What the Vorthans had thought were mining extractors were actually humanity's most advanced weapons, devices that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. The demonstration was surgical in its precision. Several small asteroids in the nearby field suddenly began to change, their rocky surfaces transforming into perfect geometric shapes, then into completely different materials. "They're changing the atomic structure of solid matter," whispered the Vorthan science officer in disbelief. "Such control, it should be impossible." Zexthal watched in growing horror as he began to understand the true nature of what they had encountered. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was evidence of a species that had dedicated itself to survival through innovation and adaptation. Every system his empire had developed for conquest was being systematically neutralized by human ingenuity. "Commander Zexthal," Admiral Rodriguez said, her tone becoming more serious, "I want you to understand something very important. This demonstration could just as easily have been applied to your ships instead of those asteroids. We could have changed the molecular structure of your hulls, turned your weapons into flowers, or simply rearranged the atoms of your life support systems." The implication was terrifying and clear. The humans weren't just demonstrating superior technology. They were showing mercy by not using it lethally. Dr. Kim reported the final piece of their intelligence revelation. "Admiral, I'm now transmitting the locations of all known Vorthan military installations, supply depots, and command centers. I'm also including detailed analyses of their defensive capabilities and recommended strategies for neutralizing each facility." The data that flooded the Vorthan systems was overwhelming. Star charts showing the exact locations of their most secret bases, detailed plans of their fortifications, and tactical analyses that revealed every weakness in their defenses. It was clear that if humanity chose to go on the offensive, the Vorthan Empire would fall within months. "How?" Zexthal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you know all of this?" Admiral Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. "Because, Commander, humanity's greatest strength has never been our technology or our weapons. It's been our ability to adapt, to learn, and to turn our enemies' own strengths against them. We've been invisible in your empire for years, studying, learning, and preparing." The final revelation came when Sarah Connor activated the tactical display showing the true scope of human presence in the galaxy. What appeared to be dozens of isolated mining operations, trading posts, and research stations were revealed to be interconnected nodes in a vast military network. "Every primitive human outpost you've encountered over the past 5 years has been gathering intelligence," Admiral Rodriguez explained. "Every trade negotiation, every diplomatic contact, every casual encounter has been carefully designed to learn about your capabilities while hiding our own." Zexthal slumped in his command chair as the full magnitude of his mistake became clear. The Vorthan Empire had built its power on the assumption that they were dealing with inferior species, but humanity had turned that assumption into a weapon, using their enemies' arrogance against them. "What do you want?" Zexthal asked, his voice defeated. "What we've always wanted," Admiral Rodriguez replied. "To be left alone to build our civilization in peace. But since that doesn't seem to be possible, We'll settle for making sure that every aggressive empire in the galaxy understands exactly what will happen if they threaten humanity. Pete Williams powered down the demonstration systems, but the message had been delivered with devastating clarity. The Vorthan fleet was completely outmatched, not just technologically, but strategically and tactically as well. Commander, Admiral Rodriguez continued, "You're going to return to your empire and deliver a message. Tell them that humanity is no longer hiding. Tell them that every species they've conquered is going to learn about these technologies. And tell them that the age of conquest through superior force is over." The Vorthan fleet began to withdraw, their retreat broadcast across multiple frequencies to ensure that other alien powers would learn of humanity's true capabilities. As they departed, long-range sensors picked up similar revelations occurring throughout the galaxy as other hidden human installations dropped their disguises. Dr. Kim looked up from his science station with satisfaction. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the other installations. The masquerade is ending everywhere. Humanity is showing its true face to the galaxy." Admiral Rodriguez nodded, watching as the last of the Vorthan ships disappeared into hyperspace. "Good. It's time the galaxy learned that there's a difference between being peaceful and being helpless." In the weeks that followed, the revelation of humanity's true capabilities sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Species that had viewed humans as primitive scavengers suddenly found themselves reassessing every interaction they'd had with humanity. The Vorthan Empire, once confident in their military supremacy, began the difficult process of transitioning from an aggressive expansionist power to a more cautious and diplomatic one. But perhaps most importantly, the smaller species that had lived in fear of conquest by aggressive empires found new hope. Humanity's technologies began to spread, not as weapons of conquest, but as tools of defense for any species that chose cooperation over domination. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating humanity. Behind the facade of struggling miners and desperate colonists lay a species with the ingenuity, determination, and strategic thinking to outmaneuver enemies who had seemed invincible. And in research stations throughout human space, now operating openly, humanity's best minds continued their work, not to conquer the galaxy, but to ensure that no one else could conquer it either.